Hi everyone, welcome to my review of Ridley Scott's The Duellists in 1977. So here we are, back on YouTube. Been away for a few days because basically I received a concussion. My fault, an accident in the house. But yeah, basically I wasn't quite well enough to kind of make some videos, but I feel kind of at least 90%, now to kind of do some more. But yeah, I just didn't want to do it when I was feeling, really, really bad. And yes, basically back here with one of the films over the last few days that I actually wanted to review. The other being a Scorsese film, which I really look forward to kind of going through. But this one, this is the one that I've been actually looking forward to for quite a while now. Ever since I was kind of seeing Tarantino films and stuff, Scorsese films. I was really really big on, of course, Harvey Keitel, and he is among my favourite actors of all time. Just absolutely love Harvey Keitel. And of course, Ridley Scott. I've said before, I'm not big on Ridley Scott films. I think Alien is the only one that I absolutely love at the moment. Gladiator, I've had kind of up and down relationship with that over the years. Blade Runner, I think, is one of the films that I kind of like but don't love. That it's very very popular. I don't really care for that too much, but visually it's stunning. And yes, there's a lot of films that I do not like really from Ridley Scott, and just as well ones I've not heard great things about. But yes, basically this one I thought was one of the ones I could really like. I love period films. This is set, it starts 1800, and it's in France, and basically these two guys, basically soldiers, French soldiers, played by Keitel and Keith Carradine. It's about their duels over the years. It's probably about 16 years. I think it goes on for at least. From 1800 is the first occurrence. And yeah, I thought the way this was described, I thought, wow, I could love this. Actually, it could be one of the Ridley Scott films that I really really respond to. I love period films. The best film for me, of the century, 20th century, is a period film, and as well, there's maybe another period film in my top 10 as well. Absolutely love period films. Love adventure films. I love if done well, of course, all this sort of stuff. But epic films, especially if there's set over quite a few years and it's got like a real progression to it. And of course, I love Harvey Keitel. So this one, I thought, I watched it yesterday, and I just thought, yeah, I've just got to check it out. And I watched it. It was just on Sky. And yeah, I think disappointing. I'll just say it now. Yes, it's a debut film, but and this film, it started off good actually. It was nothing special from the very beginning. I think personally for me anyway. And loads of people have called this. Actually an underappreciated masterpiece. I thought I wanted to be, someone who kind of watched it and found this. It would have been great, and who knows it. If it was, it could have been my favourite Ridley Scott film, but no. It's just another one that I don't like. This one I really wanted to love, but it just isn't for me. It's not a great film. It's been compared to Barry Lyndon. Of course, everyone has their own opinion, but I just don't see that at all. Barry Lyndon. But yes, basically, it started off good. I think all praise is, the performance by Keith Carradine is actually good, and actually it's good throughout the rest of the film. It's not really a flaw. It's just his character. Really the thing with this film, and say in a nutshell, very very visually impressive. I think. Ridley Scott, whatever I think about some of his films, including Blade Runner, not being great, visually it is, of course. Blade Runner is stunning. Gladiator, wonderfully visually, all the visuals are wonderful in that film. Alien, of course, all this sort of stuff. His films, usually have some sort of, really something that wows you visually, and this film is very very good in terms of the cinematography, and just the way he kind of captures the period. I think the costumes as well are very impressive. This is quite a small budget. It was less than $1 million, I believe. And it doesn't, in terms of the look of the film, the costumes, it doesn't show that. I think actually it really really impressive, the costumes, and just the way he recreates the time, and actually just the use of smoke and all this kind of stuff. The lighting, it seems a lot of the time very natural, which is great. And I think there is flaws in the visuals. I don't think they're great. And it comes into play with the actual way things are framed at times. At times, it does feel like he's trying to go for something like Barry Lyndon with the kind of painted, picturesque kind of, everything looks like a painting. But at times, the way people are framed, up close, is quite off-putting. It's not. I don't think it's done that well as well. The actual. There's a couple near the end impossible shots, and I'm not going to really get into that too much, but because it's hard to kind of say when it is. But there's a couple of moments where there's a couple of takes on that. Really, I don't think they make sense. It's a bit impossible actually. But yes, basically, and the way people are framed and all this kind of stuff is a big. At times, it's quite off-putting. It's not not great. It feels a bit cheap in that sense. But the main thing with the visuals that really lets it down, well, it comes into play, of course, the editing. We'll get to that in a minute. But yes, the visuals, cinematography, very good. He's showing his eye here, and I think the character that Keith Carradine plays, basically, he's good. I think he's okay. The performance is good. Keith Carradine, and just a couple of moments that I was kind of, you could say I was invested with, and kind of. I felt some sort of connection with, and kind of. I think there's some good conversations there. I think the duels were very good. That's a thing, as well. It's called the Duellists, and the duels are actually really, really well done. Until the last ones actually, which is not really a duel. But yes, basically the sword fights, basically the sword dueling. They are very, very well shot. There's an intensity to them. Very involving, the handheld camera use is very impressive, and just I think they're just very, very patiently thought out, well choreographed. I was really liking that, and yeah, I was kind of I was intrigued a little bit, see how this would play out. And there's a woman in it as well, that was kind of the love interest, I believe, of Keith Carradine's character, and she wasn't great in the film, but I kind of there was something interesting going on with this romance, you could say. Once it gets to the half an hour mark, really takes a dip, and this is not, this is an epic film. Now, we'll get to the flaws now. It's meant to be this epic film, or at least, it's a period film, kind of adventure. But it really, definitely, it's trying to be a big epic. It's just, it's, for me, it just doesn't warrant the kind of what this is. I think basically, it seems like Ridley Scott was trying to make an epic. But it's just not enough material for me to make this. Even a compelling 90-minute film, which it roughly is, just a bit over that, and it feels like at times it's like squashed into this short film. But then again, there's not enough material really to sustain that. And it seems like there's quite a lot of time jumps in the film. It goes from different years, and it feels like it kind of rushes through that with very little material that's really compelling. It kind of course, explores the Napoleonic Wars, but really it doesn't fully go into this, and it's kind of this film obviously focuses on this feud, that's set across these years. These two French soldiers, and basically the way this is set up as well in the first half an hour. That's one of the things I was already disappointed with. It's just. Basically, Keitel, and yes, I love Harvey Keitel. I think he's brilliant in everything. All I'll say, is he's not brilliant in this film for me, and that's it. I'm not going to say any more because I really respect Harvey Keitel. It just didn't work. And yes, basically, he's doing things. He's dueling people. Gets in some trouble with it all, and he's kind of outgoing character and quite confident and cocky. And then basically, Keith Carradine's character is sent to kind of. Bring him in, basically, and that's the setup. That's the duel, the feud that kind of happens. That's how it begins. Harvey Keitel takes it as an insult, and basically that's what sets up this massive feud that kind of lasts for all these years. And I just feel that it wasn't well set up, and it's kind of hinted at times that there's some real backstory here. There's kind of a long. Kind of really deep kind of thing to do with honour and everything. I didn't really feel that. I felt it was kind of a bit of an excuse. It just didn't happen very organically. It was very, You know, I love. I don't really care too much about believability at times, but really when it gets to this, you know, the point where it is actually quite unbelievable. You know, the whole setup, and even more so, you know, once you know they kind of keep appearing. It's a bit of a laughing stock, really. It's quite hilarious. Keitel, you know, appears at different times in the film, and you see him and he's looking, and Keith Carradine's looking as well, and it's just like they're in Russia one minute, you know, and they're in another place, and they just kind of they just so happen to stumble across each other, and it's a bit hilarious, you know, it's a bit kind of stupid, silly, you know. There's kind of these weird zooms that happen. They stare at each other, and kind of like, and a lot of time, you know, it's just very. I just didn't quite know what I was meant to feel, and it was just very unbelievable how they kept kind of coming across each other. And as I say, I'm not one to kind of bash on a film for plot holes and everything, but it just makes it even more, even less of a film that I kind of believed in, kind of got invested in. You know, and then once obviously the half an hour mark ends, you know, when they're kind of separated from their hometown and everything, and that you see them in different time jumps, it just gets worse and worse, this film, for me personally. You know, we'll kind of say that it's, you know, first of all, just nowhere near as interesting dialogue, you know, or anything like that. There's not really much. As I say, you know, this film, it's not got much material really. It is just basically this duel, you know, the backdrop, of course, is these wars, you know, in this time period. And yes, you know, visually and everything, it kind of portrays the time period well. The dialogue, you know, at times not so much. You know, it doesn't feel very realistic at all. You know, but you know, the accents don't you know, help with that. But you know, I can look over that. But basically, you know, it kind of just glosses over different moments. Keith Carradine, you kind of follow him, you know, more than Keitel, his character, and basically, you know, he's just going through different moments in his life. You know, he's getting married and he's got some kids, and it's just at times it's quite awkward. Other times just very generic. It doesn't. I never really got that invested after this, you know, half an hour mark, because it just sort of brushed over it. It didn't really. It never really actually gave much character development after this, you know, for either of the characters. At the end of the film, I didn't know, you know, what the hell Harvey Keitel's character was, you know, at all. I didn't really know his motivations. I didn't really care in the end, unfortunately. And Keith Carradine's character, he just, again, it seems like it's trying to fit this massive, you know, kind of ambitious filming into this 90 minutes, but again, it's not got the really essential material here. The character development, you know, and the script really just isn't very good for me, you know. And I think you know, you've got some good performances, you know, from some side characters, and of course Keith Carradine is good. You know, I'm not going to say the same for Keitel, unfortunately. But yes, basically, you know, the second, you know, third of the film was a big step down. You know, I just thought it was getting quite uninteresting. You know, and kind of, I didn't really see the narrative. You know, it wasn't very strong. The script, of course, you know, as I say, it just wasn't as good here. Even the visuals, you know, not as impressive. But yes, basically, the last third of the film, the final act, really it is quite weak overall. At times bad. I think, you know, I really lost, you know, interest here, and it was just stupid. It really was. Also, the editing. I'll talk about that. You know, there's times where, you know, in the duels, yeah, no, it really is. It's good editing. But when you get to the moments where, you know, the early on duels, that is the sword fight. When you get to these bits, the Carradine's on the horse and everything, when he's on his own, on this adventure, you know, and that's when the film unfortunately gets worse. But yes, basically, there's moments where the editing is poor. You know, I think it's absolutely bizarre, and you know, and there's moments where it kind of cuts, you know, basically back to certain moments with Keitel and everything, and the feud that goes on, even, you know, and basically, very abrupt, poorly done, cheap. You know, cheap and off-putting, at times a bit pretentious, and then you just got random moments where Carradine just jumps over this kind of bit with a horse, and there's a big loud music plays. There's all this sort of stuff. It's just very bizarre. You know, it feels quite cheap after the first half an hour in terms of the editing. You know, the costumes and everything, of course, throughout are impressive, but the editing really lets it down, and it just doesn't have a nice flow really at all. The editing really plays into that. You know, and of course, The film started off warm, fairly warm. It kind of becomes a bit cold, especially towards the end of the film. And just at the end, I just thought that's a bit of a pointless film. I feel the story, the way it's told, it just kind of I didn't really get invested overall this film. I think the duel was just absolutely it was just laughable, really. How they kind of got this feud going on all over these years. They keep dueling each other just over something he's ordered to do, and it could have been done well. I'm describing it as that could easily happen in the story. In the film, just didn't come across well here. The way it happened, very random, very forced, and very very unbelievable. Performances overall not great, of course, and the editing, as I've said, and then you've got this kind of finale that happens in the film, and it's just a bit pathetic, really. And then the way it ends is a bit pretentious for me personally, as well. Very very cold and forced, depressing kind of ending. And I just thought it's a bit pointless. This film, not a great film at all. I think actually it's gone into the weak mark for me because the ending of the film, it's just really really. I just thought that didn't work. And I think there is some good moments in this film. There's some impressive stuff, but overall, a pretty weak outing. As a debut, I think, and this is very very obscure. This film really is quite unknown actually. And it's not one of them for me personally, and that's great if you think so. But for me, it's not one of the lost classics, an underappreciated, a lost gem or anything, a masterpiece. It really isn't for me. And well, of course, it's not Scott's worst film. It's just not. It's not that impressive either, and it's just unfortunately another film that another one I can just kind of cross off that I don't really like from Scott. But of course, respected the director, but I just didn't. I thought overall, to wrap up, it just not enough material that engaged me to kind of last over this film really. And it's an epic film, and it's set over these years, but it's just each occurrence that happens. It's just really, really, it's very, very rushed, and there's not really anything that happens at times. There's one time there's a time jump, and then in between that and another one, it's basically, a dinner scene involving Carradine. There's very little interesting stuff happens. It's just a dinner scene, and then it just jumps again. This is the thing, it feels like it wants to be, really, really big in scope. It's not got the material really to kind of sustain that, and this duel, this feud that was set up, just wasn't very effective. It was a bit bizarre. The whole film was a bit bizarre actually. Very very bizarre. At times just laughable, and the editing very very cheap. Unfortunately, it lets down even the whole visual aspect of the film. But overall, very good visuals. In terms of cinematography, I think it has got some very good stuff in there. Early on, but overall, I think I'd have to give it a 49%, and that's what I'll give it. I was going to give it a 50, but really thinking about it, it feels a bit pointless as well. But yes, that's what I'd give it, 49%. Not a bad film per se, but it is very underwhelming for me personally. I always get a bit surprised actually when I don't even like a period film from at least a well-known director, because it's just, I love period films, when they're done well, and I just think it's really really interesting what you can do in cinema. You can actually play out like a fantasy, period films, the best of them, and just very very interesting time period as well in this film, and it just wasn't really the large scales of it wasn't actually really done in a compelling way, and then the actual bare bones of the film, which is this feud, these duels that happen over these years, and kind of these soldiers, just it wasn't that effective really for me, and it's just very very in the end, certainly in the end, very bizarre, and I hated the ending actually. It was a good shot, but really how it played out is depressing, and I just think the acting is very disappointing overall from certain people, and just a misfire from me, but yes, not a bad film, and I'd recommend it. I definitely recommend it. But yeah, I just think a weak film for me, very disappointing. But I'm not too bothered because a day before that or two, I watched wow, I watched a Scorsese film. Can't wait to review that. And yes, thanks for watching my review.